a little synopsis of apps that I use. This one here is a good one. This one's called Snapseed. Snapseed is a very innovative app used to, it's called Nick software, first launched on the iPad in 2011. Apple named it Apple App of the Year. Following year, Google snatched it up, the company, made it a $5 app free and available on Android. So Snapseed is available both now on iOS and Android both. It's a good app. Once you get the hang of Snapseed, you can do everything from tuning an image, sliding left and right across the screen to control a slider to what percentages you want. So here's an example here of a contrast setting from a -6 all the way to a +1 or +3, it looks like. Snapseed gives the following filters, control over filters. You can do presets like black and white, contrast, brightness. Does have a digital zoom. Pretty good editor inside of it. And here's some of the snapshot of some of the features within Snapseed. Then Pixlr Express or Autodesk Pixlr. The Autodesk Pixlr and Pixlr Express both is it's Autodesk Pixlr for Android, but still known as Pixlr Express in the Apple's App Store. It's a free app. It's a good app to edit photos, by the way. It's a good app to manipulate photos for post-production. We use it this semester in post-production design, and I've used it for a number of years. And I've turned it on to a number of close friends of mine that are photographers. And Nels Ackerman, you might have heard of. He's a professional photographer. He's also a photographer for Ronald Reagan for years. He's now using Pixlr. He came and spoke to our class a couple of years ago, and he was getting ready to go to Washington. And I was sharing with the class that night about Pixlr. He'd never heard of it before. What surprised me is Nels Ackerman. So anyway, he started using him and his team because you don't have to have, it's basically like an online version of Photoshop, kind of a dumbed down version of Photoshop, because you can do layering. Those of you into Photoshop, I know some of you go to Photoshop classes and you do it all the time anyway. So it's like a dumbed down version of an online version of Photoshop, basically. So Pixlr's a good one. It's a free app. Here's what the filters look like on Pixlr. The editing filters are pretty easy to use. It's really good for post editing. I've not used it much for taking pictures, but I've used it a lot for post editing for sure, because it does a really good job. What's nice about it, unlike other apps, it has layering, which is hard to find on any app besides Photoshop apps. So it's got it built into that. VSCO Cam. It's a film-inspired presets for Lightroom and Aperture. Lightroom is an offshoot, or it's actually one of the packages in Adobe Suite. And so it's really high-end post-production, post-editing, available for, and you can even take pictures with it, Android and iOS. It also has all sorts of looks. It looks like a desktop app, basically, on a phone. It starts out from free, and then you can add other options to it. I think 99 cents per option. And it's a really solid app, and they keep it updated all the time. And so this one here shows different settings that you can preset to. And what these are, by the way, these little codes down here, is, you know how like we've been over so far, how you can manipulate on most of your cameras. When you go to manual mode, you have the ability to manipulate ISO and shutter speed. This one you can actually predefine what you want certain buttons to be down here, and say if you have predefined ISO 200 a sunny day, you can just tap on it and it'll show that filter for you automatically on the app before you take the picture. So it just speeds things up a little bit for you. And that's a benefit of using an app for sure. Lightroom Mobile. This is a serious photo editing app. Plenty of tools for those of you that have a DSLR or a middle range camera that can shoot raw film or raw digital. Even if you don't have, you can upload regular PNGs and JPEGs to that as well from a smartphone, and it works just great. Here's some of the pictures of editing an image. And so it's kind of like best way to explain it in Photoshop, how you go into layering and you can do levels and layering. You can do that with the swipe of a finger in Lightroom Mobile with gestures. Afterlight has enough filters to please even the pickiest iPhoneographer, which might be the first time you've heard that term. It's an iPhoneographer or an Androidographer. Tons of different textures and frames. That's with this one. And so here's what it looks like. Has a lot of cool effects like the superimpose letters over pictures, whole bunch of filters you can apply. A lot of after effects and after lightings you can do. Filter Storm. This has not been updated in a while. I take it back. It did update recently in iOS. It's one guy that wrote it. And so I'm sure he's busy. But anyway, it's a good one. It's capable of handling raw files on a DSLR camera. It can output very large file sizes. So here's what it looks like. And this is all developed by one guy, and he keeps it updated as he can. So it's got a lot of information. Like on this screen here, where it goes into the metadata, that's where you can bring in the graphs and charts of your picture and your histogram. It'll show a lot of really cool things post-edit of your photo. Photoshop Touch. You might have this already on your phone, maybe. It is a $10 both at Apple and Android. It's well worth it, by the way. It is a good app. And it's showing here an example here on Photoshop Touch of like you can do in Photoshop, how you can bring in the layering manipulation on this one here is called a skew layering. And you can click on this button here, and as you move it across the picture, it'll change the lighting effect of that image. So tons of Photoshop tools: temperature, color, noise reduction, rubber stamp, magic wand to fix things like blemishes, red eye, stuff like that. It's like Photoshop in the palm of your hand is how they sell it. This is how it looks. So it does have, by the way, built-in layering features as well. Duplicate layer, empty layer, photo layer. And so it, again, is really well worth the $10 for the app for sure. And if you're going to be taking any amount of photos, which I know you are, it's definitely a good app to have for post editing for sure. Photo Editor by Avery. They are a popular company for editing software, photo editing software. And it's a free app for Android and iOS. They have tools that work on Flickr, which most of you are using in here. Squarespace as well as another one. And if you're a developer, they have an SDK that you can bring into apps to use as well. Use all the bells and whistles. And so here's some of the screens of this app. So like on the left here, it has different light scenes, kind of like you got through doing this last week. It has scenery, food, portrait, night. And then over here it shows adding a style to an existing photo. It has a sharpness tool, contrast highlight shadow tool, spot removal tool, tons of features. has tons of Adobe add-ons that you just added on, and they do cost Adobe ones, but you can pick and choose which one you want, which one you like. And then Instagram. I'm guessing a lot of Instagram users in here. It's the #1 mobile social media platform today. Instagram has recently updated their apps, and they have some pretty cool filters for photos. If you've not yet experienced that, even if you're not an Instagram fan, you can still edit photos with Instagram, though, even though you might not be an Instagram user. You have to sign in, but you can definitely use all the tools for that. So this just shows some examples of different filters like saturation, highlights, different color filters here on the right. And then Facebook, also they've updated their tools for photos and their ability to edit photos, which maybe not a lot of users are aware of. Maybe you are, but you can do some pretty powerful editing now on Facebook as well with the filters within Facebook. All right, so there's a number of little apps you can play with and at your discretion. This announcement basically is talking about I set up a Flickr group for our site, for our class, and most of you already done this. If you're here earlier, I just had you log into Flickr, click on that link in the announcement, and then click join. We found out it's the easiest way to do it. Because I think you did get an invite from me in your email, possibly, your Yahoo email. But most of you probably just use Yahoo email to log into Flickr, maybe not for anything else. So this is the easiest way to join the photo group. And I'll show you what it looks like real quick. And you can do this after class or anytime in the next week is fine. You'll see here 11 members have joined so far. And you can't see any members until you're signed in and part of the group. At the top here is some of the photos that you guys have taken of week 2. I think when you went out, took photos of each other. Just a little grid here of that. I brought in one album of my own just to show you what we can do with it. It has a built-in discussion board as well, and I did put one in here about. I noticed when I was looking at photo albums last night, there's a few Flickr photo albums I did not have the link for your Flickr photo album. And if that was you, I just put in a note to you in a comment. Here's an example of what one looks like. So if you need help, let me know before you leave, and I'll make sure and show you where that's at on your Flickr account. So I'll have that. And so this will be a way for us to kind of join our albums into one group. And it's like any other social media group. It has discussion in it. We can add photos. You guys can have discussion and comments and things of that nature. So I haven't figured out how I want to use it this semester, but more than likely we'll use it, but with 1 or 2 critiques that we do this semester, we'll use the Flickr group to do that. And if you're not on Flickr, I will upload your photos into this group to where folks can critique your photos as well. Sound good? And so well worth it. It doesn't cost anything. And so we're going to use it at least 2 times this semester on our when we sit there and discuss our photos and give your thoughts on photos and things like that. All right. So we are in week 4, and we're going over contact sheet, ISO. Actually, contact sheet, we're not going over this. We're going to move that up. We're going over ISO. I'm going to give you some called cheat sheets or camera cards to help you keep with you at all times, whether it be on your phone or a piece of paper in your camera bag or in your backpack. I'll also give you a take-home exercise this week. It's the only one you have this semester on a quiz, which is on terminology. It's open notes, and you just have to take a quick quiz take-home. And then we'll talk about we'll do an in-class exercise on Google Photos. If you don't already have that, we'll do a quick, here's how to get into Google Photos. And one of the reasons why I think it's important to use all the photo tools like most of you use in Flickr many of you are already using Google, but you maybe aren't familiar with some of the features that Google Photo has that you might want to use in the future, possibly. I'll just kind of give you a real quick overview of some things you can do in Google Photos that maybe you can't do in any other platform. And everybody uses Google anyway, right? You use it here at school, use it at work, at home, whatever. It's everywhere. In fact, I heard a stat a week ago. Okay, I'm going to give you guys a question here and tell me which one you think. What do you think the answer is? Okay, so social media, right? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google Plus. Remember that? Google Plus. Out of all I just mentioned in the U.S. of A, which one do you think is the #1 used social media platform?
Instagram.
How many says Facebook? How many says Instagram? Huh? Yeah, sure. Google Plus, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Those 4. Out of those 4 platforms, which one do you think is, out of the US of A, the #1 platform in social media? How many says Google Plus or Google Plus? How many Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? Drum roll. The answer is Google Plus. I'm like, what?
Are you sure that's correct?
Yeah, it is correct. Yeah, it was a study done on social media platforms. And I think one reason why it came up that way, what I just mentioned earlier, everybody uses Google. Now, just because we use Google, though, doesn't mean we use our Google Plus social media account, right? Even though we all have one, we just probably don't use it. But it shows up on all of the demographic feeds of who's using what just because we're logged into it, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, I don't use Google Plus much myself. You probably know as well. So I thought that was kind of an interesting latest stat I just read. And so anyway, so let's go over, first off, some cheat sheets for your camera. And these can be stored on your iPhone, your Droid, a Dropbox account, in your camera bag, in your back pocket, wherever you want to put them. I'll give you my little 2 cents on each one of them. There's 3 cards I'm going to go over. And then the ISO at the bottom is a notes document we're going to look at. This first card I've already downloaded because it kind of prints out sideways when you print it out, so it's hard to look at on the screen. So I've already downloaded it to make it look a little nicer here. So I'll make it a little bit bigger for you to see what it is. So this one's called Beechers Photo Flashcards. It's actually the oldest running camera flash card known to mankind. It's been around for a long time. When I first started in film photography, Beechers was the go-to on even back then with 35mm film, but now does have, transformed in the digital age. So great! It's a great multi-page, 15 pages. It came out in a little booklet, and I put it in a PDF here. But you can fold it up, you can put it in your phone, whatever. It's got a really cool, what I like about it is it explains each term and then gives really good examples of each one of these terms, I think. And so like an example gives 3 countries at the very top. Metaphorically, there are 3 countries on your camera. Maybe you never heard of that before, right? ISO, lens opening, and shutter speed. That's what he called it, was the 3 countries. And ISO, sensitivity of camera sensor to light. We went over that. The sensor is what records your photographs. Turn down the ISO volume in bright light. Turn up the ISO volume in dim light. Again, very simple, understandable definitions, I think, right? So if you're in bright light, turn down the ISO. If you're in dim light, turn up the ISO. Simple. And then it gives some, I'll blow this up a little bit more. Then it gives some examples of what ranges you might use. So in sun, 100 to 200 range, shady 400, dim 800 to 3200. And the little asterisk here means no flash. Noise increases as you turn the ISO up, and that was one of the questions on the little pop quiz today. Noise is graininess, wrong color pixels, usually green or magenta. Noise isn't always detrimental. We talked about this last week. Sometimes we like noise. Sometimes we want to break the rules. We want to make things look a little different, right? Like the ET scene we looked at last week. You know, we want things to kind of look kind of like that sometimes. Oh, by the way, talk about scenes. I don't know if you guys heard. You might not be a astronomer here or anybody involved in the stars or the moon, but anybody heard about the blood moon? What is it? The lunar eclipse, the blood moon, and something else. All three combined tomorrow morning. Was supposed to be the first time since what 1800s or something. Yeah, so it's going to be early in the morning, which I know somebody would be asleep, but it'd be kind of cool to get up. They said the best viewings on the east and west, but I think we'll still be able to see here, evidently, is what the weather people are telling us. And so it's going to be early in the morning. When you guys go home, go to your favorite news channel. It'll probably tell you the best time to view. So it'd be kind of cool to take a photo of it, I'm thinking. So I'm going to try to do. And if you do have any type of, tripod you can set it on and take a photo, that'd be awesome. I'm going to try to do the same. And so that'll be kind of cool to see. And then it goes over auto ISO, and I won't read all these, but you get the gist here. It goes over each one of these and with definition and description. Not a lot of detail, but just enough detail to be like, oh yeah, I got it. Again, that's why it's called cheat sheet or beginner card booklet. So that's the first one. I definitely recommend it. Highly recommend it. I use it still today. I keep it with me on my phone, on my tablet all the time, looking at stuff and seeing what I can play with and manipulate things. The second one, card 2, brings it up in this format. It's more of a linear, same look, so it's a little bit larger reading, a little easier to read maybe than the other one, but it's basically all linear versus kind of a booklet type thing. And then the third one is this one here. This is Jim's photo cheat sheet. It condenses Beechers. In fact, if you see anything that's photo related, that's a cheat sheet, you'll see some reference to Beechers within that. And so it's just, he's everywhere. He's a, kind of like the Einstein of photography as far as when it comes to terminologies and things. So again, more of a condensed version, but does put things in a little bit different definition or a little different examples. And he starts his with a numeric following, a numeric order. He starts up with number 1. When you pick up your camera, ask these questions. Is the light good? What's the direction of light? How large is the light source? Contrast. What's the color of light? Set the white balance. How much light is there? Set the ISO. Which letter do you use on the exposure dial for depth of field, motion, or none of the above? What you see is not what you get. Contrast, color, and contrast. When should you not depend on the light meter? Tricky exposure situations. What's the best focal length? Change the shape and compress, expand space. And then it says read on for answers. And then is light good is one. What's the direction of light? What's the color of light? How much light is there? Which letter do you use for exposure? Goes over different dials on some of your cameras. And so again, this one is good as well. So it just depends on, reading. You can notice all three of them is different font wise. This one's the first one. I've blown this up some. This is what it actually looks like, actual size. It's pretty, maybe 10, 12 point font, maybe at the highest, maybe. This one much larger, a lot nicer layout, but what's 37 pages on this one? It's a lot. It's a lot of pages. So it's the same as this one, which is 13 pages, I think, 15 pages. So it's double pages on this one or this one, but the same content. So again, this one's number 1, small font. This one's number 2, larger font, same content. Number 3, a little bit larger font than 1, and just does a different way of presenting. For a beginner, I think it's good because he does at the front end talk about as soon as you get ready to take a photo, what questions are good to ask to help. And what, with those questions or with those answers, what do you need to do with your camera? What settings you need to change? So Beecher does that a little bit, but not as much as this guy does, what Jim does. And so anyway, those three, you can look at all of them and decide which one you want. I would, maybe look at all three of them and keep them around for a while. And then you'll probably naturally gravitate to one that you like the best. Make sense? Most of your cameras, by the way, if you have a camera that you're using in the class, has a manual, but it's not as concise and precise as this, and easy to follow, I think. So these are really good for you to keep, just for you. You're not going to be graded on any of that. It's just a good cheat sheet for you to help you. Okay, then we're going to go over ISO document. This ISO notes is just a document I've used over the years. It's a really good explanation of ISO and how to use it. So hopefully I've blown it up enough where you can read it. You can follow along on your computer as well. Because your homework this week, your take-home assignment is going to be on using ISO, the camera sensitivity to light explained, and how to use it. So most of you are relatively new to digital photography, or you're trying to get better skilled at photography. And so some of the acronyms and lingo can be daunting to understand. And so this week, besides talking about ISO, we are going to be talking about, after this, some take-home digital photography terms. But ISO is one of those settings that it's pretty dead simple that you need to understand some things. First is the acronym ISO stands for International Standards Organization, the main governing body that standardizes sensitivity ratings for camera sensors. So the camera sensors within every single camera and phone cameras today are developed. The standards are developed by this ISO organization. And so they will determine, they got thousands of pages of documents just on ISO settings for cameras and camera sensitivities of sensors, what's needed and required. So it's a term carried over from film, by the way. When you change your ISO setting, you're adjusting your camera sensitivity to light. ISO setting can be anywhere from 24 to 6400 or higher. Those numbers have a direct relationship with the device's sensitivity. So the lower you make the setting, makes it less sensitive, and higher makes it more sensitive. So along with shutter speed and aperture, ISO is one of the three factors we talked about in week 2, the three legs of a stool in photography that determines your picture's exposure. Remember, we talked about in week 2 how when you think of good photo, you think of good exposure. So whatever the good exposure is of that photo is going to make it a good photo. So finding the right ISO setting. First of all, you should know that the higher the ISO translates into a noisier or grainier image, usually. As a general rule, you want the lowest setting that you need. So the least common denominator is what you're looking for. Like in this room, it's pretty dark, so we would need maybe a 300 or 400 ISO minimal to get fairly good saturation in this room. Generally, check the picture below we'll look at that can make a difference. So we see on the left an ISO 100, and this is outside, and ISO 3200. So you can just see where you're sitting, the graininess on the right side. Okay. And that graininess you cannot fix post-production. Okay. You can't fix graininess post-production. It's very difficult, near impossible. You can make it better in post-production, but it's not going to make it look like on the left, usually. Okay. So ISO is really important, because if ISO messes up with the graininess enough, again, it's beyond repair. Now, there might be times where you want that artistic look, or you want that kind of look and feel. You know what to do now. You can bump up the ISO to the highest setting to get that grainy look. A lot of times you'll see in film, and in film specifically, where you're an action film or something, you'll notice a film will match more on the right side than the left side, just to make kind of a rough texture for that scene, a fight scene or whatever it might be. Okay. And so left side more clean, right side more noisy, all because of ISO. So a lower ISO will usually produce a more color accurate, aesthetically pleasing image. But there are situations where higher ISO is desirable. The proper ISO really depends on the level of lighting you have around you. So rather than relying on one overarching rule: consult these list of tips. And I really like these tips. These are great. Probably the best list of tips over the years I've found. So if your subject's moving and you're trying to freeze a motion for a still, you'll likely need a higher ISO to compensate for the higher shutter speed and ensure the images gets enough light. Now, if you're doing this freeze motion and a higher ISO, what other component you think you might need? Possibly. We've talked about this, especially a freeze type of situation. Yeah. Shutter speed. But what is outside the camera itself? What are you going to need, you think? Maybe. Yeah, tripod. I would definitely recommend a tripod for freeze motion, because especially higher ISO and freeze motion, because it's very difficult to hold that camera still unless you're holding it, on one knee or leaning against a tree. Yeah, and I've done that before. So you might need a tripod to accurately correct that. So if you're going for more of a vintage aesthetic look and want to add a little bit of grain on purpose, don't be afraid to bump up the ISO, like we already mentioned in some of the films that I talked about. Some of the film tips that they use in film and directing films. If you use a tripod to stabilize your camera, you can usually get away with a slower shutter speed, as I already mentioned, which in turn allows you to use a lower ISO. If you're shooting an image that does not require large depth of field, more of a flat kind of depth of field, you can increase the camera's aperture, thus allowing more light in and thus using a lower ISO. If you're shooting in artificial light, like in here, or in your home, or in a building, even if it's daylight, you typically get away with a lower ISO. But you have to use flash. And flash can do some weird things, as you probably noticed over time. It can whitewash your background of your film, of your subjects. Your subjects look fine maybe, but the back is totally black or dark. So I try to stay away from flash as much as possible and use only the settings to offset the light. And one of those settings is ISO. Probably need to experiment, which we're going to do this week, until you hit the sweet spot. And each camera and phone is different, by the way, when it comes to ISO settings, okay? Never trust your camera's display when you're looking at a photo. Don't assume your picture will turn out just because that little 2-inch preview window or the phone's image looks awesome. Doesn't always mean it's going to. Your shots almost always look different on a computer too, by the way, or on your phone or on a tablet. And you probably won't be able to spot noise in your camera's small, low resolution display. For this reason, we highly recommend that you zoom in a bit, and you can do it with your phones easily, definitely, or on your tablets easily by just zooming in, pinching and zooming in to see any images for grain. And, I would say zoom in at least at 300% level or 200% level at least to see those image grains. And the beauty of having digital camera is if you have a lot of image grain, retake the photo, you're right there. You've literally just previewed it. You don't like it, or it's grainy. You can bump that ISO down a little bit more. And you might have to reposition yourself to get a better shot, okay? And again, and that's the beauty of having digital over film. Film, we only have so much to play with, so we're really careful about how we took it. Today, we can take 100 photos in 5 minutes. It's no big deal. So utilize that benefit definitely to your benefit to be able to get things done. Nothing worse than taking a bunch of seemingly great shots, which we've all done, only to discover they're noisy, speckled, and you're like, oh man, this picture sucks. I hate it. All right, which we've all done before. And guess what? You can't go back to the wedding. It's over. The wedding's done. The reunion's over. You're at home now. And we've all done that before. So hopefully that'll help. The little tips will help you. And out of all the tips that he mentions here that I really like is the very first one on the freeze motion. For some reason, and this is actually a good one, when you're shooting family event shots, there's always somebody, and it is a cool effect, to get a freeze motion shot of some type. People jumping up in the air, on a beach, in a wedding, whatever. And students always want to know how to do that pretty early on. And again, higher ISO, higher shutter speed, and composition will help you get that light needed to freeze a frame and get a good shot. Okay. And I know most of your cameras have like the freeze frame, and I want you to steer away from that and try to use manual as much as possible. Next is the Google exercise, which is super duper easy, hopefully. Sign in for Google Photos on this one, and everybody's going to do that. Just go to that link on photos.google.com, log in with your Gmail account. I don't care what Gmail account you use. You can use a personal one if you want to. You don't have to be Rock Valley's. And you see mine in here. I'm logged in as my my personal one, cconkle@gmail.com. And I've got a couple from the class, a couple from church in here, a couple servers, server rooms, an old Oregon Trail. Anybody remember Oregon Trail, by the way? Oregon Trail game?
Yeah.
No Oregon Trail people?
I know about it.
You know Oregon Trail. See, Oregon Trail, I'll pull it up here. On this is an old Apple IIe computer, which I bought from a math teacher who was retiring when the kids were little. And it came with like 500 5.25 floppies, right? And Oregon Trail was the #1 game they loved. My son Mark loved this game. And you could play it for hours. And it had math, it had logic, it had everything in it, adventure. And so anyway, I threw that in there. And so, and you guys took some pretty good photos too, by the way. I was looking at some of these you took on your week 2 assignment. We had a lot of fun. And so anyway, once you sign in, I want to show you some things in Google Photo while you're getting signed into Google Photo. And you just literally have to log in is all you have to do. One thing that they've added recently to Google Photos is this assistant. The assistant helps a lot. Okay, if you're brand new to Google, just like Flickr maybe, and you want to do something quickly, like I wanted to create a collage of everybody, so I use this collage feature in Google Photos of everybody's photos from week 2, and you literally just click in. It's a little assistant wizard. I click in collage, and then basically it has up here on the top left, create collage, and so I go in here and select some photos that I want. So I selected 2 photos. It says select 2 to 9 photos, by the way, up here on the upper right. It tells me exactly what to select. I click create. Boom. Bless you. Created a photo collage. And I just selected those photos and it did it for me. And what's cool about it is now that I have this collage created, I can come in here, by the way, and go to the edit button. And I can make little fast changes if I want to do a nice grayscale, add some other effects, or if I don't like any of them, I go back to the original, all within all these nice filters that are in here. I'm going to go back to, like, say, this iPhone, which was some kind of a grayscale cool one I like. If I want to rotate, I can rotate the photo as well. Pretty simple there to give a nice kind of a different feel to the photo collage. Maybe kind of twist it a little bit, which offsets it a little bit, which again makes it a little bit more interesting than the boring 4 squares. Just tilting it just a little bit does that. If I hit this plus symbol here, again, it blows this up and it's already up for me. Let's go done. Now I can go in here and hit the share button, and I can share on any social media account, Facebook, Twitter. Get a link and email to somebody, or type in somebody's email and share it here. So that's collage. I'll show us another one here. Album, like you guys are doing with Flickr, right? So I want to create an album. I've already uploaded my photos, and to upload your photos, you just upload them here. But you have to have photos to create an album like you do in Flickr. So what?
Because when you went into Collage, how did you get the photos to upload?
They were already there.
Oh, they're already there.
Yep.
So okay.
And so you have to click this upload button right here.
Okay.
You have to upload photos first. Okay. Then you can do whatever. That's a good question. And so, and this is being recorded too, by the way, so you can go back and watch it later. The album, again, it just says create album up here. I select whatever photos I want. I'll select some different ones this time, and I'll click create. And then I can, you know, put in my test album, week 4, 18, hit enter. And it gets a nice feature here too, a little different than Flickr. Immediately I can add in more albums, more photos, or you can do that in Flickr. Or if I want to put in the location, I can do that as well. Or I like this feature, I can add in text immediately underneath this and say, you know, something like, you know, an event, whatever I want to do in there. And this is adding it to that layout. And you notice here I can move this too into between whatever layout I want, really. I can add another one in here. You know, what's cool about this is I can drag, once I click away from this, I can drag it anywhere I want to in this layout. It's kind of tricky. If I edit these photos, I can move this in between. I've done it before, but not wanting to work for me right now. But what's cool about it, you can do one photo at a time, put a little caption underneath this way it's supposed to work. I'll bring this one back up so you can see here. And if I don't like something, which I'll get rid of this one, X, get rid of it. Bye-bye. And then on the add location, I can add in a location I know of or go to map or suggested location. And then once I'm done, I hit the checkbox, and that's been created. And then also you can do a photo book, which is just a whole bunch of pictures put together. You create the photo book. Up to 100, I think is what it says on that. It creates an actual book. And each page, basically, you're able to put in, and I'll just do it real simple here. You're able to put in different captions for each one of your pages. You'll notice each one of these have different. And so it looks like it had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. And the back cover. A front cover, this is the front cover, this is the back cover, and each one of them has ability to edit the photo or put in some text on that photo anyway. That's kind of nice. On the cart, you can, once you're done with it, you can purchase the ebook and they will send it to you. It does cost some if you wanted to do that. And if you have images that are low res like mine are, I can remove them, replace them. So I can remove that page. It doesn't fit too well because of that. It saves things automatically, by the way, when you're done. And it does put the little Google Photos on the back cover. You can't change that. If you want to save it a draft, it'll keep it for 90 days. I'm going to go ahead and say don't save. I don't want to save it. And then lastly is animation. I'll show you that. So let's say I want to do an animation of these two photos. Well, let's do the top 3 photos. Let's do these 3 photos. And notice I can select up to 50 images to animate. Kind of going to be like a kind of a digital album slideshow type thing. That's what it's doing right now. And so in here, though, I can it was created, here it says, from a burst of 2 or more photos. And notice up here, you see where it says motion on. I can turn motion off too. So now motion is turned off on those altogether. And it's already created. It's done. I can actually click on this and hit share and share this album immediately within a minute, I've got an album. So if I have an event and I have 100 photos, which is easy to do, right? Put them in Google Photos, create a quick animation, and send it to the people that run the place or the people you invited you, and boom, you got a nice little slideshow. That's how wedding guys do it, and wedding gals do it. By the way, what I just showed you, they do that immediately all the time within the photo setting of the event. So you got the wedding, then you have a reception afterwards. They'll do this on the overhead or on a slideshow right after. How'd they do that so fast? With like Google Photos. It's really simple to do. And this one here is playing in a slideshow format, but you can also come up here and go to the slideshow right up here at the top. It'll take up full screen now, so it will fit like on an overhead in a wedding or a reunion or whatever, and it'll just continually loop until you stop it and hit the escape key. I also have some other settings as well you can put in here, like the other ones, different types of effects you can put on it. But once you're done, once you've created it, again, within a minute, you've got a nice photo album. So one I recommend on Google Photos is that assistant that I already mentioned. It's the easiest to create. It shows you exactly what to do and how to do it. Pretty simple. So you've got photos, albums, how to share it, animation, collage. That's Google Photos. Pretty cool, right? So you might not use it for everything, but there might be cases where you might want to use it. If you do load Google Photos on your phone or tablet, it does ask you if you want to upload your photos automatically. And I did this on my wife's iPhone a couple of years ago. Anybody have problems with running out of space on your phone in the past? You ever had that happen? Well, we use Google Photos on her phone to upload photos as she took them. And then at the end of every week, since they're already on Google Photos, we would delete them from her iPhone. Literally all of her photos could be deleted from her iPhone because it was on Google Photos now. And so it was a way to clear up 16 gigs of photos or 20 gigs of photos, whatever it was. And it doesn't take much to get that many, right? If I looked at everybody's phones in here, most of your data is going to be photos and videos, right? It's taking up most of your space. We use Google Photos to offset that. I think it gives you 25 or 50 gigs. I think it's 25 gigs of space, but they changed that last month. It's now unlimited. You get an unlimited photo space on Google Photos. Now they do this, just so you know, when they upload your photos, they do resize them. It's not a full quality photo, right? They do resize them, so it's not going to be maybe good enough to print out like poster size later, but they are good enough to print out, because my wife's done this, to print out Google Photos on 4x6 or 5x7, perfect, which that's most what everybody, when they do print something, usually in those two categories, right? 4x6 or 5x7. And so also within Google Photos, one of the other things I'll show you can do this on Flickr as well, is when you get a photo that you want to send or to send to somebody else, you can either download it, just like in Flickr. You can do the same thing as well. You can archive it. The archive is basically going to archive that for future use. And when you archive any photo and photos, when you click on the go to archive, it'll show you all the ones that you have in there at that time. And so it's just a way, and you'll notice on the URL, it's just an archive, kind of a place to get things out of the way. And you can organize them here too as well, which is nice. Okay, so that's Google Photos. Hopefully that helped a little bit, give you a little snapshot of Google Photos and some of the things you can do with it. All right, next, make sure you hit submit if you haven't already on your Google Photos that you did that. Great. So everybody knows where it's at. Now, you'll notice on the assignment it says this. On number 1, the first thing, 10 photo settings. And what that means is literally 10 different places. 10 different places you're going to take a photo. It could be at work, home, school, doesn't matter. The mall. Doesn't matter what the setting is, by the way. You're going to choose 3 different photo settings or 10 different photo settings. And you're going to take 3 photos of each setting. 3 photos of each photo setting. So maybe this is a photo setting, and this is a photo setting, and that's a photo setting. Or walk out in the foyer, that's a photo setting. So 10 photo settings. 3 each. And you're going to do the same increment ISO as I walked around and told you what the range was. So if you're at Cherryville Mall, you'll do 80, 100, 300. And say you're doing it at the center court or something. And you'll put in there in the label of that photo or the caption, however you want to do it, just so I can see it, that it is the place, I can see the place, and what ISO you used. Now, number 2, where I say use Google Photos, you don't have to. If you want to play around with it this week, you can, or do both. Maybe do Flickr and Google Photos. I suggest that. Doing Google Photos just to play with this week might be a good idea, to kind of play with it, to see how it works. You don't have to turn it in that way, but definitely use Google Photos to play with this week. Upload all 30 photos to week 4 photo album. Most of you use Flickr in here. That's fine. Once you upload them, then comment on each photo in Flickr with the following information. So place, lighting, ISO setting, and JPEG. Now, the lighting is going to be the actual lighting that you're in, you're not changing the white balance or lighting in your camera. So if you're in the mall, it might be indoor bright, IB, or it might be indoor dark if you're in your house somewhere and it's not well lit or something, or in your workplace. If it's outdoors, it might be sunny, so you use S, cloudy, C, indoor bright IB, indoor dark ID. Make sense? So that's the abbreviation for the lighting settings, the lighting that you're in at that time.
And that's, you're talking about white balance?
Nope, no white balance. So literally, it's going to be like this on the example. If I was at the mall